So, hello everyone. Looking at the second reading, second chapter of Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own. The scene has changed. It's still academic, though. She's in London now. She was in Cambridge, basically, was the backdrop of her thinking in the first chapter, and it's the British Museum that is the backdrop of her thinking in the second chapter. More specifically, the Reading Room, which was once a very famous place. Many great intellectual did research there, or read there, or just hung out there. Still, the room is still there, but it's no longer the place to go to get books. I think it was a very famous place, and there she is in 1928 or so. This huge, imposing room, architecturally, this amazing place. She at one point she looks at this amazing ceiling, the vaulted dome, the dome ceiling, and says, it's like a gigantic forehead, and you are like a little thought in the mind of the brain of behind that forehead. So, why is she there? She's there to, do research, to look at books about women. She's looking for ideas. She's looking for truth, is what she's looking for. The truth about women, so she can write these lectures that she's been asked to do about women in fiction. What does she find? She's appalled by what she finds. What she finds are a bunch of books that men have written about women. And she makes fun of them, and she makes up some names. Professor X, in his book about the mental, moral, and physical inferiority of women. That's a made up book. It's meant to stand for a certain attitude, I suppose, that she finds in at least some of the books that she's reading about women. But she's appalled by them, and she's amused by them. They're funny, and she likes to imagine what the men who wrote them look like and make fun of their look. I mean, she's having a good time in a certain way, but um, she's looking not only for the truth about women, she's looking for the truth of her own thoughts. Like, what her own truth in the sense, what does she really think? What are her own experiences and what are her own feelings? And she finds it underlying all these other responses. She says, all that I had retrieved from that morning's work had been the one fact of anger. The professors were angry. That is, the men who wrote these books seemed to be angry. And she herself is angry, right? What did she say? If he had written dispassionately about women, had used indisputable proofs to establish his argument, and had shown no trace of wishing that the result should be one thing rather than another. That is, if these books about women, which are mainly critical of women, had been honestly written rather than dishonestly written, um, one would not have been angry either, she says. That is, if they hadn't been angry, if the men hadn't been angry who wrote the books, she, as the reader and a woman, would not be angry in her response. But they're angry, somehow angry at women, and she's angry at their anger at women. And both of them are puzzling, right? And the main question is, why are men angry? She, after she leaves the, the library, the British Library, basically, and she's eating lunch, she finds an old, somebody's left a newspaper. Imagine that. A world in which people read newspapers and left copies of them laying around. That was my world one time. And she has some interesting things to say about that. Uh, she's reading the articles and the headlines, and she says, the most transient visitor to this planet, I thought, who picked up this paper, could not fail to be aware, even from this scattered testimony, that England is under the rule of patriarchy. Nobody in their senses could fail to detect the dominance of the professor. His was the power and the money and the influence. Patriarchy is the rule of men, the rule of fathers, literally, a male-dominated society, which is obvious just from casual look at the front page of a newspaper that we live in a patriarchy, a male-dominated society. So that makes the question even more interesting. Right? If men rule the world, as certainly they have, maybe not today in the respect or to the extent that they used to, but in 1928 it was still true. She's saying men ruled the world. So why are they so unhappy? Why are they so angry at women if they dominate women? Why are they so angry at women if they rule over women? And she suggests a kind of an answer, which I think is extremely interesting. Talking about a friend who was criticizing a female author, a very prominent author at the time, Rebecca West. She says it was a protest against some infringement of his power to believe in himself. Women have served all these centuries as looking glasses, possessing the magic and delicious power of reflecting the figure of man at twice its natural size. Without that power, probably the earth would still be swamp and jungle. The glories of all our wars would be unknown. There's a certain irony there. We should still be scratching the outlines of deer on the remains of mutton bones and bartering flints for sheepskins, or whatever simple ornament took our unsophisticated taste. That is, men, she's suggesting, they need women because they need to see themselves reflected in women as being superior. So what's the source of the anger that she finds in these male authors who've written about women? It's not that they're angry at women for being inferior. They need women to be inferior for themselves to feel superior. As she says, it's a tough old world, and you need a certain amount of self-confidence to get through it. And that confidence is often gotten, let's face it, by tearing down other people. The old saying, do you have to make other people nothing in order to feel like you're something? Well, what Woolf seems to be saying is that's what men have done to women forever. She says here, really funny, she says, the looking glass vision. Of course, the looking glass is just a mirror, right? So men look at women, and women are these mirrors that project back to them their, this false image of themselves as superior. She says the looking glass vision is of supreme importance because it charges the vitality. It stimulates the nervous system. Take it away, and man may die like the drug fiend deprived of his cocaine. Wow. So it's pretty amazing statement there. But basically, yes, that's the source of the anger is not when that women are somehow inferior. Men just take that as a fact. She says the source of the anger is when women don't play that role of being inferior so that men can feel superior. That's where the anger comes from. Like she says, why are wealthy people, rich people, oftentimes haters of the poor? And they are. Well, because they're afraid that the poor are going to take away all their money, and they won't be superior anymore. Why do men hate women? She seems to say because they're afraid that women will no longer serve that role of making them more confident in themselves. Pretty amazing. There's other really interesting stuff in here, but I would say that's the idea that really struck me, at least.